Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 26th and tonight's movie is The Alchemist Cookbook. This is a movie I have had on my radar for a while. It might even be as early as 2019. It definitely was on the short list for at least one of the Horror Nights, and it just didn't make the cut. But it was never a film that I just completely forgot about because the premise seemed interesting, and I eventually decided, hey, let's just give it a watch. The Alchemist Cookbook is about a man who, I believe, just becomes a hermit and isolates himself in the woods. I don't know if he was always an alchemist or if he wanted to be a chemist originally and things just slowly went downhill. I'm not exactly sure where on the chemist to black magic pipeline he is at the moment. This movie is notable for a couple of things. First of all, is the fact that there are only two human characters in this movie, our main man and somebody else. And also, I've heard from some of the reviews that the main character barely talks in this film. I did hear him talk in the trailer, so he's not nonverbal. I guess he's just a man of few words. The idea of alchemy has so many possibilities when it comes to stories you can make about it, and while it certainly has been used in a horror context in other media in the past, this might be the first example I can think of where that's the main focus. And while normally in fiction, alchemists are presented as somewhat respectable, like they work for the government or churches or something like that, in this movie, it just looks like some guy in a shack in the middle of the woods playing with what looks kind of like a meth lab. Then there's also the fact that the trailer I watched presented this as a very comedic sort of thing, like dark comedy, horror comedy. Then again, when you compare that to Megan, where the trailer played it very straight and people describe the movie as not very serious. So I don't know what to believe yet. I guess we'll just have to watch it. Turns out the trailer did kind of misrepresent the movie. I wouldn't really call this a horror comedy at all. I also wouldn't really call it much of a horror movie either. The Alchemist Cookbook commits one of the least interesting crimes a movie can. It's just kind of boring. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. I'm not going to divide this review up into spoilers and non spoilers because I don't really think there's a point to that. I could sum up this entire movie's plot in like 4 seconds. A recluse in the woods tries to summon a demon thinking it will bring him riches, it backfires. It's not Willow Creek boring and it's not Skinamarink boring, but it's pretty boring. There's this online movie called The Time Machine I found at a yard sale that's like kind of notorious for being boring. And one of the most defining moments of that movie was the scene where you just see a guy standing in a kitchen drinking a glass of orange juice for like 40 seconds. And this movie has a one-to-one equivalent of that. The main character, Sean, in his trailer, drinking a bottle of Gatorade for like a minute. And that's one of the first scenes in the movie. It really feels like they had the idea for like a short film, like a featurette, or even shorter than that, but decided, no, we can pad this out to feature length. This is essentially a one-man show, and the lead actor, Ty Hickson, does a fairly decent job playing Sean. He just wasn't given a lot to work with. It's kind of amazing that even though this movie is padded to hell, there's still a lot of things that we're not given any context for. We don't know how he came to live in a trailer in the middle of the woods. We don't know how he came across this alchemy book. I'm pretty sure that the only bit of world building we really get is like a picture he has in the trailer of, I assume it's like a picture of a child him and his mom. When it comes to the characterization we get about him through his actions, it's kind of mixed. He is like very nice and sweet to his cat, Casper, but when we're talking about like his actual human friend named Cortez, he's oddly picky about the stuff that is brought over, considering the fact that Cortez needs to drive out 90 minutes in order to bring it to him. Although this does lead to probably the most amusing part of the entire movie, where Cortez is saying, it's like, who cares? This is just as good as the stuff you asked for. And then Sean says, no, it's not. It's garbage. And then Cortez goes, oh, really? Come on. Like, if the cat wasn't going to eat this, I'm going to eat this. And then Sean literally calls his bluff and is like, okay, eat it. And then he actually does do it. He does manage to keep it down, but he's clearly not enjoying it. Or at least not as much as he says he is to save face. From what I got about Sean's character, it seems like someone who convinced himself that he doesn't need anybody else to get the things that he wants. It's just him against the world. And in the process of him trying to get all the things he wanted, he went way in over his head. He apparently wanted to summon this demon in order to get himself riches so he can have his own self-sufficient mansion in the middle of nowhere. But in the process, he gets Cortez killed. And in the process, he gets attacked by the demon, and then he wakes up with these like prosthetics. There's like horns growing out of his face. And there's also like sharp teeth, but they're the type of fake teeth where you can tell that they're wearing fake teeth because it like pushes out their lips a little bit. And then he just kind of wanders aimlessly around the woods for a bit until trying to drown himself in the lake. And the final part of this movie is the only horror thing I thought that they did particularly well. He like tries to drown himself in the lake, and when he's under, you hear growling and you hear footsteps approaching, but you never see what it is. And then Sean like gets out of the water and he thinks that he won, but then he looks at something we as the audience can't see, and then he screams. And then the movie just stops. There's really not much I even have to say about the Alchemist cookbook. I just thought it was boring. It's not offensive, but I didn't really think it was good either. And that's about it. I'll see you tomorrow.